What's up, traders? It's Robert Falco from Real Life Trading here with Jeremy Alexander Newsom. This is your Wednesday stock review. What's up, real life traders and team? Another month behind us, March 31st. The books are closed. First quarter of 2021 is in, and let's check out how the markets closed today. So SPY just barely missed, closing at a new all-time high. Pretty strong candle on the weekly, the monthly. If I just take off this little drawing here, you can see it looks like a nice hammer with increasing volume. So looks pretty solid there. However, if you go in intraday, we were running up all day, huge selling imbalance on the close, massive amount of volume. And I also thought it was a little bit interesting just because if I come over here to the option chain, you have some quarterly options and take a look at the ones that expired out of the money. So a lot of those market makers, option sellers, they just happened to close this thing below 397 and 398. And the biggest open interest here, this is what, 330,000 plus calls expired worthless here on the close. So interesting pin pressure at the end of the day. And yeah, another quarter behind us. Qs, we know there was a little bit of selling in the Qs throughout the month of March into February. Pretty solid gap up, decent close today as well. Although again, there was that selling towards the end of the day, probably just at the end of the quarter, people taking some profits, rebalancing, et cetera, especially those mutual funds that have to close or that have to trade the close and sell and buy at the end of the day and all that fun stuff. Ultimately, this 324.25 area on the Qs has been very, very strong resistances. We do have lower highs in here. We have not made a lower low off of this long-term moving average. The 100 is trying to hold. I do think that this retest gap fills. And for the Qs, I do think we are in for some choppiness. If you look at the week, we do have, let me just again hide that, hide those drawings. We do have what appears to be a nice pennant pattern. And I think we actually probably come in double bottom and then bounce out of here on the weekly. I think it's going to be a little bit choppy. Monthly looks like a really nice doji indecision. Obviously the Qs has been running like the wind, let us out of the Corona crash. And, you know, we had some selling, some of those high growth price to sales. Tech stocks took a little bit of a beating in the month of March, but overall, the market's still relatively bullish, but I think the Qs is going to be a bit choppy. IWM also had a very, very bullish run here and finally putting in a little bit of a indecision candle on the monthly. Here's the weekly. Looked like what appeared to be a double top potentially forming, come into the daily. And again, I think we just chop around in here. I don't think we just absolutely get wrecked, but I do think that it's going to be a little bit choppy on the IWM. The Dow, however, going really, really strong. Just 2 days ago, closed at an all-time high, the all-time high close a couple days ago. And here's your weekly candle, and then your monthly for the month of March. Looks bullish, increasing volume, very strong close on the Dow. So everyone pretty excited if they're in the Dow, which, you know, is only about 30 stocks. So not too exciting, but there's the Dow for you. Come over to look at some of the fan favorites, Tesla. So Tesla did hold up the other day. It looked like we were going to break this candle, and we did bounce, had a nice gap today, did have some follow through. This is still a bunch of lower highs in here. So I do think that Tesla just chops around into earnings. We are supposed to get delivery numbers, I think tomorrow or maybe Monday. Guidance, it sounds like they might miss slightly. However, if they do surprise to the upside, this thing could get some buying. But we'll see what happens when we hit the 50. The 50 seems to be this moving average that we're struggling with, and some resistance here around 700. But I do think we chop around into earnings and then probably slowly go higher. Chewy today, it was nice to see Chewy up. It was nice to see Chewy up on earnings overnight. However, it was a very, very big gap. We were watching it this morning and that was a pretty obvious fade, just massive retest gap on Chewy. Immediately sold, retested, I think the VWAP. Let's take a look here. Yep, retested VWAP, rolled over, even trapped some people thinking that this was a cute little double bottom. Trapped them and sold all day into the close. So this is massive volume, just absolutely massive. I think the largest volume since the IPO. So I do think that this gap fills, probably chop around in here. However, if we close above this candle, if we get a close above this candle, whoops, I had that in white for some reason. There you go, orange. If we close above this candle, I do think that we will end up going higher. Kind of like over here, you had this bearish candle and this bearish candle with volume. Once we got closes over that, we ended up going higher, but I think that's going to take some time. Here's a little fib from this low all the way over here to this high. And we almost got to that 50% retrace. So I do think that we could chop around in here. I think that this gap fills. Earnings were great, but probably one to just slowly accumulate and not load the boat too much down here just yet. So I'd want to see it pull back, fill this gap, maybe throw in one more lower wick and then start to bounce and just accumulate a position. Again, this thing went on a massive run. I think it was from this low. It was up 500%, so a little bit of a pullback was probably in order. One of the strongest stocks in the market, Home Depot, just absolutely rampage Jacksoning, all-time high. Here's this thing on the weekly, small little doji candle. What a Morningstar reversal off this weekly 50, and wow, I mean, it looks like a lightsaber on the monthly. So I do expect Home Depot to pull back a little bit. But any pullback on Home Depot appears to be buyable to me. So if we start dipping into this 293, 285 to 293 area, looks to be a buyable dip and then probably continue higher. We also had the ARKX, so the ARK Space Exploration and Innovation ETF launched just yesterday. Here was the debut, massive high wave candle followed by a small bullish inside day. Now, I do have to say, when I looked under the hood at this thing, I was not impressed. Space Exploration and Innovation ETF, and I started to see things like Trimble, the 3D printing ETF. Like, this is already one of ARK's ETFs. So they got an ETF, one of their top holdings is their own ETF. That seems a little weird to me. Kratos Defense and Security, L3, you know, those kind of make sense. JD.com, I don't know. Astronauts are going to be ordering JD.com in space. Komatsu, I think they make tractors. You have John Deere in here. You have some that, you know, again, like make sense, but Google, Amazon, I don't know. Garmin, again, that probably makes sense. Netflix, again, I don't know. They're going to be watching Netflix on the moon or Mars. Workhorse, they didn't get the USPS contract, but maybe they will be delivering mail on Mars or the moon. So so far, hopefully these are placeholders, but right now, not a fan of the ARKX ETF. Again, it's brand new, so those could just be placeholders, and then they're going to buy and sell some different stuff. So overall, pretty bullish on the market. There was some pullbacks. If you did survive the month of March, congratulations. It was much better than March of 2020, and April is right around the corner. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. We'll see you in April.